you can go ahead and open to Matthew chapter 14, beginning in verse 13. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him, and I want to pause there for a second. We know that Jesus, from this text, had been teaching for hours and hours. It's likely he had probably preached through an entire sermon series at this point, right? And the disciples and all the crowds are sitting there listening to Jesus. And while I can't prove this, I really believe that this is an example in Scripture of the disciples being hangry. They were hangry, okay? What is hangry, you may ask? Does anybody know what hangry is? Hangry is when you are so hungry that you actually get angry, right? Have you ever been hangry? Anybody in here ever been hangry? You are so hungry. You are like, it's affecting your temper. I've been hangry before. It is not fun. Well, Jesus is teaching to the crowds, and he's talking. He's teaching for hours and hours, and I think the disciples were hungry. And so they had the boldness to interrupt Jesus while he was teaching. I mean, that took boldness. Imagine this. The Son of God in front of this just massive crowd of people teaching, the words of life. And the disciples come up to him and they interrupt him and they say this. They say, Jesus, this is a remote place and it's starting to get late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food because they're hungry. And oh, by the way, Jesus, we're hungry too. Jesus replied and said, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. The disciples respond, we have here only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Verse 18, bring them here to me, Jesus said. And I love this passage right here because I think it illustrates a powerful, powerful principle. And the principle is this. Whatever it is we have, when we have a little, we can put it in Jesus' hand and he can multiply it. He can take our little bit, the little bit that we have, and when we place it in his hand, he can do the miraculous. That's what Jesus is saying here. He's saying, bring me your little bit and I'm going to make a lot. He says, you only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Well, put them in my hand and let me show you what I can do. You got a busted up marriage. Jesus says, that's okay. Bring that to me and let me show you what I can do in your marriage. He says, you're dealing with stress and anxiety in your life. That's okay. I understand that. Bring it to me and I can use that. Jesus is saying, I'm not concerned with how little you think you have. Bring it to me, put it in my hand, and I'm going to make a play. That's what Jesus is saying right here. You take your little bit, and we can do a lot because that is what I'm about, Jesus says. I am a God who provides, and I am a God who empowers.